Hello the internet, my name's Laura, welcome back to my channel. So I was looking at my YouTube channel recently, because sure why not, and I noticed that my top two videos both had something in common, and one of those was that they were both about Peperomia Graveolens, which is, I did a kind of, it ended up being like a series of videos, like November, December last year, where I found out that my Peperomia Graveolens was not a succulent like I thought it was. It was in fact a peperomia, and that was why I had had so much trouble trying to propagate it. I had learned some more about it, and I ended up doing a video on how I was going to propagate it, and then the follow-up video was the one where I showed an update like a month later of what kind of growth I had gotten on those propagations. And that second video was called The Growth of Peperomia Graveolens, and if you've ever gone to look at my actual page as opposed to just, clicking on my videos wherever they show up in your feed, that video actually has 1,400 views on it, which is a little higher than the 14 views that I normally get on my videos. And so I was looking at that and going, well, before I did that video, I went out on YouTube and tried to find videos on how to take care of Peperomia Graveolens because I wanted to know. And I ended up only finding one video, and it was a lady who had propagated a Peperomia Graveolens and then her cat ate it. And so then, yeah, it was kind of a sad end to the video. But anyway, that gave me enough information for me to do my video, but I wasn't really trying to consolidate information about these plants. Now that I've had this plant for much longer, it's probably been over a year now. Now that I've had this plant for over a year and kept it successfully, I feel like I can give out a little bit of information on how to care and propagate for this plant. And since there's so little information out there on it, I thought that this might be a nice video for people. So that is what I'm going to do for this episode. And if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and stick around. Okay, so Peperomia Graveolens is kind of an odd plant in that most people who are going to run into it are actually going to run into it in a succulent section. That's how I got, actually both of the times that I got this plant, I got them as a succulent. Like, I've seen them at Lowe's, Home Depot, you have all of the succulents just laid out, and that can be one of them. There were some over the Christmas season, those the arrangements that they got that you could buy an arrangement and then just give it to somebody as a thing, and they were in there. And it's not really hard to tell why, and most of that is that the plant itself looks like a succulent. The leaves are very thick and fleshy and stiff, and the stem is also rather stiff. So this plant is one that it holds a lot of water, and that's why everybody thinks, oh, it's a succulent, because it is a succulent type plant. However, since it's actually classified as a peperomia, it does not act the way that you would expect a succulent to act, and that's why when I very first had this plant, I tried to propagate it by putting some air roots on it, letting it propagate and that didn't work because it doesn't work like that. So anyway, most peperomias they have leafy leaves, which sounds really stupid. This is a succulent leaf when it's really thick and fleshy. Leafy leaves are leaves that are like what you would expect. I think a lot of peperomias have thicker leaves than say a philodendron or monstera, but there's still leaves. Like you feel like you can bend them, you can manipulate them. Like if I tried to bend, obviously if I tried to actually bend this, it would just snap, right? So that's what most people think of when they think of peperomia, and that's why I feel like this plant gets overlooked a lot, because it's kind of in the succulent camp, but most people don't really, I don't know, most people who do succulents that I've seen don't ever end up with this. And then most people that I see that do peperomias also don't end up with this plant. So I think it kind of sits in this weird limbo space in between, and that's why there just isn't a lot of information out there, because not a lot of people have done anything with it. But I really happen to like this plant. And that is mostly because of the awesome coloration on it, with the red undersides, which is a characteristic of peperomias, and then the green on the top. And I got my start in succulents, like a lot of people, and so this was just a plant that I had because it was a succulent. And so I cared for it like a succulent, and those are going to be the care tips that I give to you. It wants to be treated like a succulent because it doesn't need a lot of water. It's storing it both in its leaves and its stem, right? It's got a thick fleshy stem, there's water in there. It's got thick fleshy leaves, there's water in there. So you water it, you leave it alone, you let it dry out, and then you leave it for like another week. And then you can water it again. And you can even wait until it starts feeling soft. And I don't actually know, I don't own any other peperomias. Like, this is the peperomia that I have. It's just the graveolens. And so I don't know if those tend to like to dry out or if they like to be kept moist. But I'm telling you that this plant wants to dry out, be forgotten about, and then you go back to it and you water it, and it's like super happy with you. And, that is how I have successfully taken care of it. The second thing that I feel like is unlike most peperomias that I see, because they're leaves and then they get bushy, like a Rex begonia, right? Like they have a plant and then it's got the leaves. The growth pattern of Peperomia graveolens is basically like this. This is a little curved because I put it outside and it is now growing toward the sun, which is obviously this way. But Peperomia graveolens tends to get very, very leggy like this, unless it's got a sufficient amount of light. So again, like succulents, it likes a lot of light. I have not managed to get this plant the exact amount of light that it wants, even though it's growing fairly well. It is definitely a leggy plant. And so it's the type of one that, and I'm planning on doing this fairly soon, where like I would chop it off and replant it and try and make it look a little bit bushier. But for the most part, again, even the growth pattern does not necessarily look like a peperomia. There are probably some peperomias out there also that grow like this, but kind of odd. And so as long as you treat this plant like a succulent, you're pretty much going to have success with it. High indirect light, water it and forget about it, let it dry out. I have the bigger one I have in a terracotta, the littler ones I have in plastic, because when it's this small it tends to dry out pretty quickly on its own anyway. Soil is cactus, very light with perlite. Miracle Grow, so you want a very well-draining soil, again, because it's like a succulent. Then, I also wanted to obviously talk about propagation, because this type of plant does not propagate in a normal fashion. I mean, it does. It's not crazy. It's actually fairly easy. So, you just can't expect it to grow air roots. It's not going to grow air roots like a succulent is. It is a peperomia. If you go back and watch those videos, I did both soil propagation and water propagation. I actually also tried leaf propagation, because I know you can leaf propagate peperomias, and I was curious. That did not work, by the way. You might be able to get it to work. I did not get it to work. The leaves just kind of... But anyway, water propagation and soil propagation, unlike philodendrons or like those types of plants, you don't necessarily need a node. Like, you know, I cut fairly close above a node, so like a node is where the leaf comes out here. So I cut, when I did mine, fairly close to the node, and then I stuck the top part into water. You want to make sure that each part at least has one leaf on it, because that's how it's going to get its nutrients. And I stuck, you know, I made a couple sections, and I stuck some in water, I stuck some in soil. And both of them just sat there for almost a month before, and they both actually put out roots about the same time. And the way that I knew that the one in soil had started putting out roots was that they started getting new little leaves, like they actually started growing again after about a month. But none of the roots themselves come out of the node, it just comes out of the stem. So basically wherever the stem was in the water or in the soil, roots came out of it. So you don't necessarily need to worry about nodes. Like I said, I did both water and soil propagation. I ended up liking soil propagation more, which I don't often say. With very leafy plants, I tend to like water or sphagnum moss better because they need that consistent moisture in order to survive, basically, because they have no storage of moisture. These guys, because they have such fleshy leaves, the ones in soil did well, even though like I watered it and then the soil dried out and then I watered it. I'm not really good at keeping soil evenly moist, which is why usually I don't soil propagate, because you need it to be evenly moist and I just don't have any luck with that. Anyway, the soil propagated ones and the water propagating grew at about the same rate, but then when I transferred the ones from water into soil, they stopped growing for a while because they needed to acclimate to the soil, whereas the ones that were already in soil obviously kept growing because they were already acclimated to soil. So my recommendation would be to soil propagate, but you're still going to get, you know, you're still going to get a good plant out of water propagation if that's what you feel comfortable with. These, all four of these little guys are the propagations that I took last year, December, early December, is late November, early December, somewhere around there. So these guys have been growing for a while now. They're all good, they're all healthy, all four of them survived. This one actually was really rough for a little while. This was one of the water propagation ones that when I put it in soil, it just was not really happy and it almost died again until it regrew its roots like into the soil. But yeah, so Peperomia Graveolens, a little weird, not really that weird, but that should at least get you enough to get started on, if you have one and you didn't know that it was a peperomia, there you go. How to take care of it and how to propagate it, because more than likely it's going to get leggy, and if you want to keep it looking nice and compact, you're going to have to do some propagation. And I'm planning on I'm probably just going to snip these off and just stick them right back in here. I mean, like, I'm not even going to worry about anything else. But as you can see, it also blooms like a peperomia. Those are the little peperomia type blooms that are just little stamens. Just little sticks. They're not really all that impressive looking, but I walked outside and I saw that and I was like, huh, must be happy. So apparently I'm doing an okay job, and so I want you guys to be able to do an okay job too, because it's really a cool plant and I really like how it looks, and I think it's just kind of an overlooked plant because, like I said, it doesn't really fall into one category or another. If you are a peperomia collector, give it a shot. If you're a succulent collector, give it a shot. If you just think it's a cool looking plant, give it a shot. They're really, really easy to take care of as long as you don't overwater them. And I think that's probably all I have. most of the information. If there are anything that you need to know about these plants that I did not necessarily cover, go ahead and ask those questions in the comments. I'll get back to you. And if you like this video, go ahead and like this video. If you'd like to subscribe to this channel, we'd be happy to have you. And thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. And I hope you have lots of success with Peperomia Graveolens and any other plants that you have. Okay, bye-bye.